Radio Rahim here with your people too. We are doing the RIYADH season review. Let me set the table for you. RIYADH season is something that has been going on in the boxing world, I'd say the last 5 or so years. It started with the rematch of Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. So those of us who have been covering boxing as a profession and started with this journey in RIYADH season know the trajectory of this experience. And no one other than Michelle Joy Phelps could be joining me for this. And her new channel has debuted during RIYADH season as well. So she's your people too. And we've got a new arrival on the boxing scene in Jabber. Jabber is a company that I work with, and we've got the CEO of that company, the founder of that company with us, because we don't go anybody but top shelf people, and that is your people too. Alan from Jabber, the CEO, will also be joining us on Radio Rahim, and your people too. We're going to look at this year's RIYADH season, which has been an extended experience, right? Like, it was the biggest and most unique of them all. I think so far it is the best and brightest that they've brought to the stage. Promotion-wise, production-wise, fighter-wise, cards, belts on the line, significance in the boxing world. So I thought it was important that we look back this time, for the first time, at one specific season being the most recent one, and just share our experience, our journey. Michelle and I have been here from the start, so we're not going to go through the whole 5 years, but know that what we experienced this time is informed by, and we will be educating you with, our experience from the entire time we've been going to RIYADH, and these fights have been developing over the course of all these RIYADH seasons. So the very first one, and aptly named Battle of the Baddest, brought Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou together to clash. This is considered a crossover fight. Obviously, it's a boxer and an MMA fighter. Not the first crossover fight that RIYADH season had seen. Obviously, I was at the center of Paul and Fury, right? That was the biggest one up until this one. And then this one eclipsed that one. Heavyweights, huge champions in both their respective sports. Nobody really knew what was going to happen, but we all in the boxing world expected that Tyson Fury would come out, represent boxing, clear Ngannou in a couple of rounds at the most, and boxing would exit the ring triumphant and put these MMA fighters in their place once again. The kickoff for me, what really started this year's 2023-24 RIYADH season with a bang, was Fabio Wardley and Adelaide getting into a clash on camera during my interview at the kickoff press conference. It went nuts. Michelle, you were at that press conference. You'll remember that they were meant to be on the stage. They were going to announce this fight. Wardley got cut in the clash. The blood was bad. It was not anything that was staged. It was not anything that was planned, and it actually took the plan off track because they ended up not even getting on the dais to announce their fight. There was some question as to whether even the fight would happen because of the cut. And I think that really kind of set the stage for the whole event after that. Like, that really was like the beginning of RIYADH season, how it was going to be crazy and how the unexpected could be expected. For you, like I say, you've been around from the beginning of this thing, but for this last one, what was the kickoff moment for you? When did you realize, okay, this RIYADH season was different than the other 5?
I have to say it was during media week, and if I recall correctly, it was either Thursday or Friday evening when they did that Legends event. Do you remember the Legends event? Like, everybody was there. I mean, you literally saw people, legends from not only boxing, but various sporting industries. You saw Eminem. There were celebrities everywhere. I think that was sort of, for me, the wow moment of the magnitude of what RIYADH season was bringing and doing for boxing.
I think you're right. Like, that not only was the wow factor for you, but I think that's when the world kind of tuned in and was like, hey, what's going on over there? Like, we're no stranger to legends in the sport of boxing. We've encountered these people before. You and I have traveled outside the circles of sports and been around iconic people in all different fields. But the collection of people from a broad swath of different fields to come together in Riyadh at one place at one time for a single event. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that before. I mean, you go to the Oscars, it's all actors and maybe a couple of, football celebrities or something, but this group of people, you just don't see together. And so once the world saw that all these people came out to this place in Riyadh for this fight that really no titles were on the line. These guys weren't even of the same sport, but it got everybody there for that single night. I mean, Eminem, who now he's got an album out, but at that time he was like a ghost. Like seeing that guy was like seeing Bigfoot, and they brought him out. That was amazing. And then there was that iconic picture I think they took on the steps or something. That reminds me of the Jazz photo in Harlem. That I think is going to go down the annals of history, like that shot. But it wasn't long after all the celebration and pomp and circumstance had gone out the window and we were done with all of fight week that the fight in the ring certainly delivered, but not in the way I anticipated. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, like, I did not see that fight being competitive until it was. And, credit to Ngannou. This guy came from nothing. He made more than something of himself, an MMA world champion, and then decided that his value wasn't being respected in the way he thought it should be, and stepped away at the top of the game, at his top earning potential, and said, I can make more outside of this sport on my own, making my own way. Most people thought he fumbled the bag. I wouldn't have gone that far. I was like, well, let's see what he can do. But the numbers that they pulled in, I think, is certainly credit to Ngannou for knowing his worth, because he was correct. Mm-hmm. And Tyson Fury, not one to ever turn down a good bag of gold, definitely was the guy that should have been in that situation and really pissed a lot of us off in boxing, certainly me, taking that sidetrack to grab that bag, because we had Undisputed set up. Like, we thought Undisputed was going to be the launch of Riyadh season. We thought Undisputed was going to be the next huge heavyweight event. And when Tyson said it's going to be Ngannou, I said to Tyson, to his face, like, he's like, oh, what more can I do? I was like, you can become Undisputed heavyweight champion. Like, that's the more you can do. That's what we actually want, as big as this fight is going to be. So when he stepped through the ring, I figured he had this thing figured out. Like, he knew what he was going to do. What I saw was something very different. Michelle, you can't tell me you weren't at least surprised at how well Ngannou was able to do.
Yeah, I think my heart dropped when I saw what I saw. When we saw what we saw, I was like, whoa. Did not expect that. And I'm the first to admit that I completely overlooked Ngannou. I'll go on record as to say that. I absolutely saw him being walked through, and not in a disrespectful way, but just because this was his boxing debut, and I just didn't see him really doing much against who is one of the most or one of the most technically sound heavyweights of our era. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't see him doing.
It's a first-time boxer. Like, I don't care what else you do for a living, you should not be able to challenge the world heavyweight champion in boxing the first time you step through the ropes and put gloves on as a professional, right?
To be fair, as you know, and we're seeing this right now, it's a little different, but as we're seeing right now with the influencer boxing, we're seeing big paydays and big opportunities for people who have big followings, because at the end of the day, all networks really care about is, can you sell tickets? And can you sell pay-per-views? Ngannou was a big name. So yes, I get it, because at the time we had the Undisputed right there. Couldn't understand what was going on. Why were we not getting Undisputed next, right? That was the $1 million question. But overall, I saw the appeal for the fight. I mean, I would have, if I wasn't there, I would have bought it myself and watched it. But it was just the outcome was unexpected. A lot of people thought Ngannou won. I had Fury just edged it. But that's a big thing to say, right? Tyson Fury edged the fight against Francis Ngannou. Right. So again, don't know what happens there. Only Tyson truly knows what was going on in that moment. Was Ngannou as good as he looked, or was Fury having a bad night? That'll always be the question. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been a little bit of both, and we don't know what was happening inside of Fury's head, but we know what happened inside the ring. Even though there is a discrepancy about who some people thought won, I also think this is one of those unique times when one guy won the boxing match and the other guy won the fight. And so what I mean by that is I have Tyson Fury winning the boxing match. I'm scoring rounds. Tyson Fury won on the cards, even with suffering a knockdown. If I were the person who got to pick whose body I wanted to be in for those rounds, I would have wanted to be Francis Ngannou. I would not have wanted to be Tyson Fury. And that's what I mean by Ngannou won the fight. He just lost the boxing match. Ngannou's the guy you'd want to be in that fight on that night. And so when you look at the discrepancy between those two outcomes, and only one is official, who wins the boxing match, because it's a boxing match, but those who are more casual fans and those who are more excitable about just what they see are like, man, Ngannou whooped his ass. Ngannou knocked him down. Ngannou got the better of Tyson Fury. I can see a case being made for that. And that's when it's always fun if you have some kind of factual basis to go from where we can have these kind of arguments. So Jabber, of its own volition, was able to do the punch stats for Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury, break down what happened during that fight so we can see, not just round by round how you might score it, but overall what that fight looks like. So we got Alan, Jabber CEO, here with us. We were all on the call, on the night, watching these fighters do their damnedest to come out of that ring with their hand raised. And here is the story of the fight as Jabber would tell it.
Sure. Yeah. So, you wanted me to?
Yeah. The way I just described, the difference between, for instance, how you might score a fight as opposed to who you might want to be in a fight. You can see, I can at least see from the flow of the fight round by round on the flow chart, red corner being Tyson Fury, blue corner being Francis Ngannou. I mean, Alan, for those of us, who might be new to this style of an analysis, kind of break down what the audience is looking at.
Sure, yeah. So before we did our debut on May 18th, we of course did a lot of internal testing, and this fight was one of the ones we did an internal test on. Single cam dirty feet. The cool thing here is that they're dead even on the stats, right? 85 for Fury and 79 for Ngannou, and even on the high impacts. Sort of a low volume fight in terms of punches thrown and punches landed, but even. But then if we jump to the round by round stats, the page 2, you'll see there that the stats they tell a slightly different story, right? Because Ngannou landed as many punches, but he landed most of that in 3 rounds. So around 3, 4, and 8. Whereas Fury, he spread out his success a little bit more over the course of the fight. Ngannou was okay, 3, 4, and 8, that's my rounds, and just pummeling Fury during those rounds. I guess that's what you referred to in terms of sometimes there's a different person who's winning the fight versus who's winning the boxing match.
And so that set the stage for the entire RIYADH season from that point on, because we saw something that nobody expected. A lot of us who were poo-pooing the fight and saying that this was nonsense were proven wrong. And now all of a sudden, Francis Ngannou is a major player in the heavyweight division. He's in the top 10 ranked in the WBC among heavyweights. Tyson Fury is being called a fighter on the decline. People are changing their prediction as to whether or not Tyson beats Usyk now, and we're wondering if we're going to see a Ngannou rematch. Does Fury go straight into the Usyk fight? Should it be Ngannou Usyk? Like, all kind of crazy things were happening as far as the narrative was going, and that set the stage for a explosive and unpredictable Riyadh season. And so right on the heels of that real kind of chaos of Battle of the Baddest, we find out that there are more than one baddest, right? Tyson Fury is still, because the title wasn't on the line and he did win the fight, he's still WBC champion, so undisputed is still on the table. However, one of the baddest men in boxing now is Francis Ngannou, and what does the future hold for him? Well, that makes a shakeup for the whole heavyweight division. We still got Wilder out there. We still got Joshua out there. And Zhang's on the scene, another kind of wild card heavyweight where we don't know what his future is going to hold. And Day of Reckoning comes shooting right out of the cannon, right? We got Joshua now needing to prove himself against Wallen, Wilder needing to prove himself against Parker. Again, two fights that we kind of considered not walkovers like Fury Usyk I expected to be, but this is a setup, right? For Wilder, Joshua Wilder to finally have the face-off, big, humongous fight, even though it's not going to be undisputed. It would be for all the bragging rights, Britain versus America, all the narratives that we had been talking about for so many years, even before Riyadh season began. Where this goes back 5 years, that rivalry is now back 7 years, and we're finally going to get it. Riyadh season's going to produce it. We've got two gatekeeper fights for each guy to win just to hype the fight again. This is routine. This is routine. Like Fury and Ngannou was supposed to be routine, a money grab, a spectacle, get everybody engaged, and here comes the big Joshua Wilder showdown, and nobody can wait. All right, so here comes Wallen, one of Fury's former opponents, gave Fury some trouble, an absolutely respectable opponent for Joshua. If you beat Wallen, the case is made, you're back, right? Joshua handles business. Did you think Wallen had a better shot or might do better against Joshua than he did? Michelle?
Can you say that again? I'm getting a delay.
Did you think that Wallen well, let me ask you like this. What did you think of Wallen's performance against Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, look, just like you said, he's a respectable opponent for Anthony, or he was a respectable opponent for Anthony Joshua. And, the outcome was what it was. It's heavyweight boxing. You never know what's going to happen. Anthony Joshua was the victor. But Wallen is a great fighter. He is a heavy puncher in his own right. And I think that, it was a good fight, or it was a good comeback fight for Joshua, given that he still, I guess, was in that phase of climbing back into the scene, if that makes sense. Back into his own, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a good show. And of course, I think all eyes were on that event because they wanted to see if the outcome was going to eventually be Joshua versus Wilder, which I think is what everyone was expecting when they were hearing rumors of them being on the same card, right? I think everybody thought, oh my God, are we finally going to get Joshua Wilder? And then when we heard it was Joshua versus Wallen and Wilder versus Parker, it was like, wait a minute, hold up. You're both available on the same night and on the same card.
Yeah.
But close to each other?
But yeah.
So
go ahead.
Now I feel like, I need to sound off real quick because you and I know we've interviewed both of them many times when they were in negotiations years ago, right? Quote unquote negotiations. Because it was always, this team saying this team is saying that. We have waited forever for the opportunity for both of them to be quote unquote available. And finally they were, and we didn't get it. And now I feel like that fight is dead in the water, given the outcome of the last several fights for Wilder.
Yeah, okay, now it might be dead in the water, but then it was not only very alive in the water, it was the Loch Ness Monster that we just knew existed, but nobody had seen, and the fight was signed. Like, I had a really contentious, the interview wasn't contentious, but the fallout from the interview was very contentious when Joshua and I got to talking about whether or not he wanted to face Wilder, or if becoming a 3-time world champion was more important to him than the Wilder fight, which is a catch-22, right? Because what heavyweight or any fighter doesn't want to become champion again? At the same time, everyone for years has been trying to blame one side or the other for not really wanting that fight. Oh, Joshua's scared, Wilder's scared, Joshua's making, the fight not happen, Wilder is preventing the fight from happening, so now that it can potentially happen. If you say anything but, I want that guy and nothing else, the critics are coming for you. And Joshua said, well, I would prefer to be 3-time world champion than to face anybody, including Wilder. It's fair. Man can decide what he wants. But that makes it sound like you're swerving the fight. And so...
Rahim, not to cut you off, but listen, I have to add. I am almost so curious just to know, during negotiations... Why was it not an option to have that fight then? Like, what was it? Who said what? Who said, I need a fight? Who said, I'm not ready for that fight? Because something happened. Something occurred somewhere in that.
I think the powers that be said, it may be wisely in a way, because they should have won. They should have both won these fights. And we're getting to Wilder Parker. I know we're like dangling the worm in the apple, but they should have both won these fights in really in spectacular fashion. What would we have expected? Exactly what Joshua did to Wallin if he is in fact back. And don't forget, Joshua's coming off 2 losses to Usyk, and he needed at least a big win to say, hey, an impressive looking win, I should put, to say, hey, not only am I back, but I'm better. Like, I'm something of the Joshua you've seen before, right?
Right. That's a respectable opponent at that.
Yeah, all of that is part of the makeup of a clean win that's impressive. Yeah. Wilder the same. He's coming off, losses to Fury. He's got, an early knockout, but the opponent, all due respect, wasn't that impressive. The knockout now, that fight was a little bit of a time ago, and we need him to at least show that he can do one more big knockout, get the hype going again. And then we got Joshua Wilder, and it's a done deal. The contract's already signed. Joseph Parker, one of Joshua's former opponents. You knock him out clean. Now Joshua's beating somebody that Fury beat that gave him trouble. Parker gave Joshua a little bit of trouble. Wilder's knocked him out. Perfect. The narrative is there. Stage is set. Let's go. And Joseph Parker decides that we can't have what we want because he has to have what he wants. Another selfish fighter who just thinks about himself every time the bell rings, doesn't care anything about the narrative that all of us have set into play, talked about for years, written to the ink has run out of the pen. Now all of a sudden, Joseph Parker has his own life to live.
This is why I'm saying, going back to that moment in negotiation, when we're talking about putting on the day of reckoning, right? Who said that, hey, you know what? We're going to give this fight to this person, and then we're going to have you guys go is it, what was it, a team, somebody on a team that wanted a specific warm up and thought it was a warm up and maybe didn't expect much from the other guy? What was it? Because it was too risky. We know what happens in the heavyweight division. We have seen it happen so many times. Look at what Joshua and Ruiz, look what we just witnessed with Fury and Gotti. You can never underestimate anyone, number one, but especially in the heavyweight division where one punch can take you out. It's too risky. So now here we are. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we're ever going to see that fight, and nor do I think that anyone cares to see it anymore.
Michelle, we know. Listen, we've got a few fights before we get to just putting the nail in the coffin of one of the potentially biggest heavyweight fights in history. Can we just pretend for a little while longer that that's still a possibility until we get to the really it's not. Okay, because that's okay. Because
no, do you know what it is, Rahim?
Oh my God!
I feel so emotional about that one. I feel so frustrated because for so long, all we got for years was this team saying this team saying that, and we finally had the opportunity.
Yeah, I know, but okay, I will go as far with you as this. When you have Undisputed on the line, both Joshua and Wilder should have known by now that you get that fight done when it can be made. They are the prime examples of why you do not fuck around if you have an undisputed title potentially to be fought over on the line, because this fight would still be a mega fight with no titles. And at one point, they could have had $100 million purse to split and all the belts on the line. And that fight was so anticipated that you're still upset, and we'd still want to see it. At least we would have still wanted to see it right before Day of Reckoning. That's how big a fight it was.
I feel like that's one of the fights that's going to go down in my working career as the fight that never happened.
This is a fight. This is a fight we're probably going to see in 10 years.
When they're both undefeated.
This is a fight we're probably going to see in 10 years when they're both retired and Netflix is on its like 5th year of boxing. And we're going to see, you know what I mean? We're all going to see the exhibition. But let's try to stay in the narrative because I'm trying to walk you through Riyadh season, right? So at this time, we don't know what's going to happen. We know that Ngannou damn near beat Fury. Now Joshua is looking like he's all the way back, gave a dominant performance against Wallen. We don't know what the hell's going on with Wilder because Parker has come out of nowhere and been the giant slayer. Because, you know, we don't have time to go into everything, but Parker already beats Zhang. Right? Like, the fact that Parker's on this run of beating these huge punchers and starts with Wilder, the hugest puncher of all, the guy who's supposed to be like, if you get hit with that right hand, you're finished. Parker's a smaller fighter. He's, you know, not known for being a heavy puncher. Wilder should be able to catch him. Some people think Parker's past his prime, maybe even like, you know, on his decline, like maybe these are his last few fights where he's going to make a big, you know, payday. And it's just a run-of-the-mill setup fight. And now all of a sudden, Parker's the guy, and Wilder is reeling for relevance, and Ngannou is the wild card. Like, who's going to beat that guy convincingly? Who's going to dominate this MMA guy? And that brings us right into Knockout Chaos, which is aptly named, not just for the card, but for what was happening in the heavyweight division. Full-blown knockout chaos. We're not getting the knockouts we were expecting, and world championship fighters getting knocked down by boxing novice. This is chaos. Knockout chaos is, in fact, what we were experiencing and what we were all worrying might just derail even the last seeming chance we might have for an undisputed Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk showdown after all of these delays. But it's on, right? Like, okay, we're going to get it. It's going to happen. Don't worry, guys. Knockout Chaos is going to put everything right. We're going to get Ngannou the shot he deserves, right? He is on the tip of everybody's tongue as potentially the wild card who might be better than all of these heavyweights, which sounds stupid, okay? It still sounds stupid to me, even after the performance against Fury. All credit to Ngannou. It was wildly impressive. But the idea that he was just about to dominate the heavyweight division off of that was ridiculous. Yeah. However, what do I know? I said he was going to get dominated by Fury, so nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say. And here comes Joshua, with a head
We all
steam.
lost credibility after that one.
Yeah, exactly. And, we don't know how Wilder's career is going to get saved and how we're going to get Joshua Wilder now. So the big fight is Ngannou Joshua. Who'd have thunk it? And now all the people who were like, Fury's going to get rid of Ngannou in 2 rounds. Fury is going to knock him out with 1 punch. Ngannou doesn't even deserve to be in the ring. This is a circus. This is ridiculous shenanigans. They're robbing the bank. They're all picking Ngannou to beat Joshua.
Yeah.
They're picking Ngannou to beat Joshua.
Yeah, that was an interesting way of seeing how the tables turned real quick. And I was like, let's not write off AJ that easily. Like, we know that he's on the rise of a comeback. And I don't say that in any disrespectful way, but the truth is what we're seeing from Anthony Joshua today is sort of like a resurgence, right? So I didn't think that Ngannou was going to beat Joshua, but I did expect Ngannou to come in overly confident given his performance against Fury. So it was good to see. He was talking a lot of shit and I loved it. You know me, I like the drama. I like the, if tables are flying and chairs are going, I'm having a good time. So I enjoyed that there was a bit of that, but I never actually believed that Ngannou was going to, in any capacity, beat Anthony Joshua.
No. I didn't believe it. You didn't believe it. A lot of people did, though. And even if we didn't believe it, a lot of people who were like, this is crazy. There's no way that's happening. Were not nearly as willing to put themselves on the record this time doubting Ngannou as they were the first time against Fury. So, respect.
Can't go 2-0. Well, can't go 2-0.
But it was also enraging because those of us who are of this boxing heart don't like to hear MMA people talk shit. And for the entirety, from the time the Fury got knocked down until the first bell rung on Joshua Ngannou, that's all I heard from MMA fans and casual boxing fans. They could not get enough.
My own friends.
Yeah.
From my own friends. Like,
your
who
own
are bigger
friends and family turn against you.
I told you when they fight, Ngannou was going to beat Fury, and I'm like, well, he didn't beat Fury, but okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It was a lot of. There was a good stretch there for them to talk a little bit, but I think
But it was down to Joshua to do the business. Yeah. He had to resurrect the pride of the entire boxing world and set the world right. Like this was like I can't sleep if Ngannou has another performance like this against a top heavyweight. What is my life about? Like, have I been wrong about everything every day forever? Because that's the only explanation if this guy all of a sudden just dominates the heavyweight division out of nowhere. And thank God. Thank Ben Davidson, thank Eddie Hearn, but no more than anyone, thank Anthony Joshua for doing the business. He went in there and unceremoniously, with very basic boxing traps, put that bear in a bear trap. It's right on his foot, went right down with a simple step back, right hand, good night. That's like, I wouldn't say the first thing you learn, but once you get your footwork down in boxing, that's maybe like the second thing you learn after the jab. It's like, all right, step back, right hand. Let's go. That was very satisfying. It's nothing to do with the person. I love Ngannou. I love his spirit. But man, I couldn't have been happier to see this man hit the floor and be done because my nightmare was finally over.
At the end of the day, it really still was boxing versus MMA that night. So right. I think that Ngannou is a great man. He's a really kind person to speak to. He's a gentleman. But but that's not what we were going for that night. It was down to boxing's going to do the business tonight, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're going to do this, right? Like, because we can't be having this for the community. Because it was literally for the whole community that night.
Right. And, so, all right, so Wilder, he needs a win to make this Joshua Wilder fight, like, real. Like, again, for us to be excited, at least 75% as excited as we once were, right? We can't be coming off all these losses to Fury, one big knockout, and then a loss again to Parker. So Joshua on his incline instead of decline, on his rise again, his Phoenix in his Phoenix bag. Who is he gonna fight? Because it can't be Wilder. Wilder now needs to make another comeback. Well, the wild card, of course, Zhang, the big Joe Joyce killer, the big unexpected wild card from China, massive puncher, definitely a force in the heavyweight division. That's a good matchup. That matchup sells. That's a challenge for both fighters, to be sure. Zhang's, knocking on 41. He needs a big opportunity. All right, so let's see now if he can get past.
There's that amateur history between them. Obviously,
Right.
Joshua beat Zhang.
Good point. Sets a great narrative. We would both have been like, that's a damn good fight. Love to see it. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Somebody got selfish. Somebody couldn't let us have even this. Joseph Parker once again put himself in front of the entire boxing world, decided that none of us could enjoy our lives because he had something to prove. He had to win another fight. More important than everything we had potentially on the table, Joseph Parker needed to do the Joseph Parker thing and ruin everybody's plans. Here he comes.
Honestly,
go ahead.
Joe is on a mission right now. He wants that rematch with Anthony Joshua.
Yep.
He wants a rematch. And he's like, ain't nobody getting in my way.
Credit to him.
And to be fair, yes, exactly. Credit to him, because to be fair, whenever AJ's name was mentioned, and anytime somebody suggested a Parker rematch, it was always, nah, we've been there, done that. So now that he's kind of working his way through come on, Wilder, Zhang, two of the most dangerous and heavy hitters in boxing, in heavyweight, and he did the business. Yeah, he deserves a rematch with Anthony Joshua. He has absolutely deserved the rematch at this point.
He's taken all the food off of Joshua's menu. They're like, no, we've eaten that already. We don't want to have seconds of that. We want to try something new. That's off the menu. That's off the menu. It's time for seconds. That's all that's left. He is putting himself in a position that is undeniably not only a legitimate rematch, a fight that people should and will be calling for, but kind of an undeniable swerve for Joshua at that stage. Like when he got his hand raised against Zhang, it's like, how does Joshua avoid this guy, right? Like he's in a position now to say, you're ducking me if you don't come for this fight, right? And of course, now let's just catch everybody up to speed, right? Ngannou is essentially now all of a sudden from top 10 heavyweight to like, who? Like, nobody's talking about Ngannou. It was like, all of a sudden he does exist. He was, he was like the ghost of Christmas past. It was really scary for a minute, but we have definitely moved on. I don't know what's happening with Ngannou. And Wilder, again, at this point, it's the final bell has rung on Knockout Chaos. Wilder is in no man's land. Like, we don't know what fight makes sense for him right now. Joshua's clearly not the one. Zhang now has been defeated by Parker, so both of those guys are kind of in no man's land. Like, all right, they're still big punchers. They both got defeated by this underdog that really no one expected to even have another chapter of his career. And the undisputed fight still hasn't taken place. So there are still heavyweight championships kind of oddly floating out there if Fury doesn't step up and finally have the undisputed, can one of these other guys step in? Can Parker step in? Can Joshua step in? Are they still needing to face off each other? Is Fury going to retire or swerve to one of these other opponents instead of, Usyk, because everybody's picking Usyk against him now? Does he feel like maybe he doesn't have as good a shot as he once thought he did? What is going to happen? Now, Knockout Chaos just made things more chaotic. This did not settle anything, except that we did, after the Knockout Chaos, a very short few days afterwards, get it confirmed that we would indeed have the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. That fight was happening. Tyson's in. Usyk's always been in. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
What happened, Michelle? What happened?
So now we're on the undisputed fight.
I mean, we would be.
I'm just saying, like, are we going to that now? Because
well, but we would be. That's what we would have thought. And ultimately, yes, but not immediately. Because somebody decided to have a hard spar a couple of weeks before the undisputed fight takes place. Somebody decided that they wanted to just be cut and make us wait even longer.
He said be cut as if he chose.
This, you know what? Every time.
It happens. Look, it happens. I mean, I know we're jumping.
No. None of your excuses, Michelle Joy Phelps.
Same thing. Like, injuries occur not long before a fight's supposed to happen.
If that happens before and instead of Fury and Ngannou, fine. Things happen. It's sparring. It's boxing. But just like I said at the beginning of the show, when you have a shot to get undisputed in the ring and on the line, you don't fuck around, because something always happens. The boxing gods doth have a sense of humor. So when Tyson Fury was finally ready, he was like, okay, I've made all of my extra bags. I've done my retirement, in and out of retirement. I'm finally going to bless you guys with undisputed. We're going to let Usyk defend all of those belts and have the opportunity to fight for the WBC. I'm ready. You know what the boxing god said? Not yet. Not yet. And you can't give them a chance to do that.
Look, I can't. I understand. I understand the frustration. I get it. But at the same time, injuries do occur, and that's something that I don't feel anybody chooses. Nobody. Listen, Tyson Fury would never choose to be cut before the undisputed, knowing that months later he's going to have to fight him, risking a potential cut opening again in the undisputed fight, which obviously was the big question of the night. Is the cut going to be a problem? So no one's choosing for something like that. It's not like it was like, oh, I have a sprained arm or elbow. It was like,
I will tell you, no, someone chose. I'll tell you who chose. The boxing god Murphy. The Irishman got the last laugh. Murphy's Law chose to cut Tyson Fury because that's what the boxing gods do. That's what happened with Ruiz Joshua. That's what they do. They are not going to have you dictating to them when these things happen. They will give you an opportunity, and if you swerve it, if you think you're in charge, the boxing gods will say, not yet. We're going to make it a little harder for you than you thought. And now Joshua still hasn't had a chance to fight for undisputed, doesn't have any of the belts. Maybe one day will, but there's the lesson in that. And Wilder, the way it looks right now, may never have a chance to fight for undisputed. Joshua's still in the game. You know what I mean? Wilder is, at home at the drawing board. Like, is this shit still worth it?
That option was on the line, so you can't say it never was. It was on the line in the past.
Yeah.
But God knows what's happened.
Yeah.
Too many people got in the way. I don't know what.
They fucked around. That's what I'm saying. Who knows? Like,
basically now history will have it that fight will never happened, and they never got to do it in the peak of their careers when both of them were undefeated and champions. So that was there for them at one point. So we can't sit here and entirely feel bad because the option was there.
I feel bad for me. Maybe I'm not being clear. maybe.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel your pain. That's why I get so passionate about it. I get so angry when I talk about it because I'm like, I literally just want to throw my hands up and walk off screen right now because it's just so frustrating to know the amount of times that these things could have happened, didn't happen. Again, I think people like to think that time is on their side. It's not.
Yeah.
You said, fuck around, find out. Father Time's catching up with everybody right now. So, I mean, we're literally watching, the most dangerous man in the division who had the heaviest punch in the division being knocked out, being taken out by guys that no one in the past would have ever have given a chance. So this is the thing. You don't have time in boxing. You got to take advantage and strike while the iron's hot.
So
that's
the
it.
iron finally got hot again, and we finally had Undisputed on the line again. $10 million penalty for anybody who pulled out, thanks to His Excellency.
Thank God.
Yes.
No, seriously, that needs to be a thing because I feel like sometimes, and I'm like, again, I'm not saying that by any means Tyson tried to pull out or doing it. I do not believe that conspiracy, but I do think that there should be penalties for certain things, right? Like, I know this is a little off topic, but even when somebody gets popped for drug testing and they're still collecting a check, there should be a fine always. And it should be your whole purse.
All I'm saying is I agree with you in the sense, I'm not saying that Fury decided to get cut. I'm saying that deciding to not fight for Undisputed when it was available the first time is what opened the door to some freakish cut happening in sparring or some almost losing to an MMA fighter, which even though the title wasn't on the line would have totally reshaped what Undisputed even meant. People would be like, it would have been way less of an occasion. Like it opened the door in Joshua and Wilder's case to Ruiz completely derailing $100 million payday for both. And then to Joseph Parker. And then on the heels of that, Zhang derailing us again from what we would have still loved to see, these two giants in the heavyweight division from different continents, different backgrounds, completely different perspectives on life, clashing with two different skill sets. Like they say, styles make fights, but so does timing. And that time for that style of fight to clash with the best of it certainly has passed for the moment, if not forever. And that I put down to the fighters themselves. Like, that's just no matter. It doesn't at this point matter pointing fingers because both of them together, the two fighters, could have made that happen. I'm certain of it, and that's always the case. At some stage, it comes down like Spence Crawford, another fight that we could easily still be talking about not having been made. The reason that we can talk about it, and even though the fight was somewhat one-sided, it was worth having. And I do not write Spence off. I know we're going on a sidetrack here, but I do not write Spence off for a second. I respect him. I'm waiting for that comeback. I think he's lost one fight to a superior pound-for-pound number one fighter, and he had the mettle to make that fight happen when it was in his hands to say yes. That is the difference. That is how you get legendary nights, legendary fights, undisputed on the record. Both fighters have to be like, we're not doing anything but that. And then all of a sudden, everybody who makes money off of them figures a way how to make it happen. And so finally, Undisputed comes along. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. And you know what happens? It's a super, super close fight as far as the judges are concerned, a split decision. It was a hell of an entertaining fight, but I would say it's one of those fights that really do lend itself to what happens inside the numbers because, again, two different styles, two different fighters coming at boxing from two different techniques and approaches. And there was a a couple of times. Everyone talks about when Tyson Fury almost got knocked out in the 9th round, or at least knocked down, and hit was stopped from hitting the canvas by the ropes, and then the action was stopped by the refs. But not many people talk about that uppercut that Alexander Usyk suffered, and I thought if Fury had followed that up with a good 1-2, another clean shot, we might have seen Usyk on the canvas. Like, that was a staggering punch that Tyson didn't capitalize on. So if we look inside the numbers on Ring of Fire, I think the story that is told is as fascinating as the action that we saw in the ring. So
Can I just give you a suggestion on something?
What's that?
Your show needs to be called Facts Over Feelings.
I'm catching facts, not feelings.
Because what you're doing is not feelings based. It's 100% stats.
All facts.
It's 100% facts.
All facts.
You can't
I love
argue
it.
with that.
The hashtag facts, not feelings. Yes. So the other thing that made Undisputed a really pivotal occasion for boxing, beyond it being 25 years in the weight, beyond it being in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, beyond it being an opportunity for a British heavyweight to reclaim the Undisputed, since the last heavyweight owned that title, which was a British fighter who was in attendance on the night. It's the very first time ever on network broadcast boxing you had undisputed stats. We had the actual statistics from every punch counted, and then a set of analytics produced by Jabber for that fight. First time ever debuting on the Undisputed. And I want to bring in Alan, our CEO at Jabber, the statistics for Undisputed. Tell me the story that they told on the night, Alan.
Well, so on the overall numbers, Fury, he landed 144, and Alexander Usyk, he landed 191. So he outlanded Fury by a little bit, especially in the high quality shots, the high impacts. Usyk outlanded Fury by quite a bit. And also, probably to no surprise to anybody, on the pressure metric, Usyk triggered our pressure metrics, our pressure indicators, 64% of the time of a round on average, whereas Fury only triggered it 28% of the time of a round on average. So the overall stats at least quite heavily favor Usyk. Round by round, though, it looks a little bit different, because a lot of that lead to Usyk on the stats is really from the end of the fight, like round 8 and forward, especially around 9 and forward. So around 9, 10, 11, 12, that's really where Usyk was shining in that fight. Up until that point, they were landing, let's say, similar amount of points, amounts of shots, as you can see on the stats. Fury's best rounds, on the stats at least, 5 and 6. There he outlanded Usyk by a pretty solid margin, and he landed some nasty max impact body shots in round 5, and a huge right uppercut max impact also in round 6. So I guess those were the best rounds for Fury, at least on the stats.
I would say a thing to notice, like you said, the overall stats, high impact shots, 51-23 in the overall high impact stat for punching power and effectiveness is, I think, a margin that no one really expected. I wouldn't have gone into this fight thinking that the high impact shots would be 2-1 for Alexander Usyk. Also, I would have thought the landed shots probably would go to Usyk, but the high impact shots would go to Fury. And so I put that down to pressure, because I think the difference between what we thought we might see from Usyk and what we did see, and I thought what won the fight for him, was that instead of trying to outbox Fury on his feet and go long and try to dip under Fury's jab and go in and out, he went right up the middle. He was the pressure fighter. He put Fury on his back foot. He made Fury, get into the corner and and clown a bit and avoid, and Fury was throwing kind of one-shot jabs, getting out of the way. But when Alexander Usyk said, "I will not leave you alone," when they got into a little tussle at the weigh-in, this is what he meant. 64% to 28% for Usyk on pressure is the difference between the fight. More so, I would say, than the high-impact shots, even that he's more than doubled high-impact shots. Those shots came from that pressure. And the fact that it was a split decision goes down to how you look at the breakdown of those rounds.
Yeah, something interesting to note there on this actually is in the combination diagrams. Usyk was really putting it to him. If you look at the combination diagrams of Fury first, Fury is landing his best work with the jab, like the left straight, and he's then got some solid hooks to the body, as you can see, and springing in a few max impact uppercuts too. But if you look at the combination diagram from Usyk, it's like he lands with everything. There's not a punch in the book that he didn't land a max or high impact shot with. And so they came to the fight with different intentions, it seems.
What do you can anybody make a case for the split decision? I mean, is there a way to look at these numbers and be like, okay, maybe Fury won?
Decision.
I mean, even on the stats that I'm seeing, it looked like Fury really dominated only in rounds 5 and 6, where he landed more, he had high impact, he thrown more, and had better aggression. But aside from that, it was really, according to stats, it was Usyk.
Right.
Yeah. All of those max impact that Fury landed, they were landed during round 5 and 6. That's where he landed all of his max impact shots. So I think a lot of people said he was hurting Usyk during that round, and that would make sense, at least if you look at according to the stats. But
guys,
here's the thing:
some of it, the fourth round as well, some of them. But it really, if you had to, like, if you're making a case, it's definitely round 4 through 6 that had Tyson ahead of Usyk in most, with landed high impact pressure and aggression.
The thing is, when people score boxing, when the volume is lower, and as it was in those earlier rounds in terms of landed shots, other things tend to come into play, like who's the aggressor, who's moving forward, who's showing the fans some cool defensive moves and whatnot. So, it's not impossible that a judge may give a round to the other fighter, even if the other guy landed slightly more.
You make an interesting point when you talk about, like, who was doing better at the beginning, who was doing better at the end. I can't make a case for a split decision with the judges. It should have been a unanimous decision. However, the emotional content of the fight, I think, is a way you could honestly be mistaken and not know. I'm not suggesting there's a nefarious element at play. I'm saying if there isn't a nefarious element at play, then there is something we could consider, which is what you're expecting to happen when the fight starts, right? Tyson Fury is the bigger personality. Tyson Fury is clowning around at the beginning. He's getting hit with clean, effective punches, but he wisely, in a way, is clowning and shaking them off and making it look like they don't matter. Like he's controlling the entertainment while Usyk's actually controlling the fight. And if you're watching Fury's show, you can miss what's actually happening in the ring and be deceived, which is what these numbers will not fall victim to. The numbers aren't watching the show. The numbers are the numbers, and they are calculated by what actually happens. Whereas perception, I think Fury is a master at manipulating. And that is also part of the game. It has been from the beginning. If you can make a judge think you won a fight by, like they say, steal a round, you can lose 2.5 minutes of a round, and then in 30 seconds, shoe shine a guy, land one big punch, and then the judge might tick that round for you. I'm not saying that's what Fury did here, but I'm saying that that's something that all fighters know is a tactic. If you're losing a round, try to steal it at the end. Is that fair? No. It's a matter of perception. Fury is an incredible entertainer. He's a very, very intelligent fighter, brilliant, and he knows how boxing works. The crowd is on his side. A lot of people over from England for that fight. A lot of cheering for Fury from the beginning to the end. And when he almost got knocked out in the 9th round and he comes back, doesn't get knocked out, that gets people excited. Once a fighter is on the ropes, literally, and starts to make a comeback, no matter who you're cheering for, as the winner, you're also cheering for a great fight. And so when you see a guy coming back, it makes you excited. You want to give him the next round, if he, even just for not getting knocked out. If he at least makes the next round competitive, you're more likely to score that next round for the guy who almost got knocked out in the last round. These are all emotional content type of scoring, and it is something that we can all fall victim to at any time, which is why it's so important to have objective numbers that can't be swayed by that kind of honest mistake. And I think that could have played a factor even with the judges on the night. But I was thinking about Ford Ball because that was a really close fight, and a lot of people thought that Ford should have edged that fight. I had Ball winning, but I understand how people think Ford got it. And another fight that is very, very interesting to the statistics. So let's look at the numbers.
Those numbers are so cool, right? If it makes sense, there's a lot of controversy because look at the numbers: 289 for Ford, 292 for Ball. On number of landed shots connects to target area, it could not really be any closer, could it? You do see a little bit of a higher quality of shots. So 61 high impacts for Ford, 52 for Ball. But where you really see a big difference in this fight is on pressure and aggression. So Ball was triggering the pressure metric twice as much as Ford, like 2x throughout all 12 rounds with no stopping throughout that entire fight. And on the aggression too, of the 12 rounds, there was only 8 rounds. Eight of those 12 rounds, Ball was leading. And then in 4 of them, Ford managed to just break it even on the aggression and on the pressure. So what this means to people who aren't into those two metrics, it means that Ball was moving forward. He was putting Ford on the ropes. On the aggression, he was initiating exchanges. He was throwing combinations and doing great work with that.
I remember while we were watching the fight, Alan, we were talking about the incredible combination punching. Can we look at the combination punching numbers from both fighters?
Yeah, put them up on the screen. They're so cool. Especially Nick Ball. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Almost 30% of his shots thrown were thrown as part of a quad plus combination. That means like those long-winded combinations. 30%. Again, that's not something you see often. I think it may be the first time we've seen that in the kind of high-volume fight. And it makes sense he did it because if you look at his accuracy on those long-winded combinations, he was getting more than 45%. So accuracy, whereas with his singles, he was getting something like maybe 25, 30-ish. So Ball was doing what was working for him, and that was the long combinations. Whereas Raymond Ford throwing combinations too, but if you look at the success, it was more with the single shots, and less with the combinations, as with Nick Ball.
Those kind of metrics, again, for the lower weight class fighters are really going to be fascinating and consistent because when those high volume shots are landing, you just can't tell me that a referee, a judge, or even somebody monitoring the fight with punch clickers are going to be able to watch two guys engaged, both throwing combination punches, incredibly high volume, and have an accurate understanding of which punches landed, which punches got blocked, which punches missed, and who did the better when they get engaged in an exchange like that. I think Ford with his high impact shots, those big bombs, is what made a case for him having potentially won or gotten a draw out of the fight. But the way the numbers break down and the way I remember the fight on the night, I still had the edge to Ball. But I thought the scorecards in this case were accurate. 15-13 was fair. I could understand why it would be a split decision, and I was totally fine with that. So this is just a great example of how the judges can get it right, but it also is still fascinating to see how they get to where they are, even when they get it right. June 1st, we saw Queensberry versus Matchroom, and we did something that was incredibly unique that didn't even end up on the network because we at Jabber did it internally and then put it out on socials. We put it out for the fans' consumption, and then I also presented it to each promoter post-fight just for their reaction, and I thought it was fascinating. It was the overall stats, the aggregate stats from all the fighters at Queensberry composited into one fighter, and all the fighters on Matchroom composited into one fighter, and then we made the respective promoters the representatives of those fighters, as they are the representatives of their promotion companies, and we came with aggregate stats, Team Matchroom versus Team Queensberry. Now, those of us who watched the fights will remember that Team Queensberry did a clean sweep. If you just look at the outcome of Matchroom got their asses whipped unapologetically by Queensberry. However, if you look at the statistics of the aggregated stats from each promotional company's fighters as a collective, it's a much closer metric by which to judge each promotion company. And the reason for that is each fight was close, and the knockouts, as far as the score went, ran it up to 10. And the fact that every fighter in Queensberry won, of course, is what made it a shutout. But you wouldn't think that that was an entertaining night of boxing to watch because it looked like an incredibly dominant performance. However, even though it was dominant in the outcome, it was incredibly competitive in the actual fight. So, yeah, Alan, run it down for us, just the numbers, the aggregate stats.
837 for Eddie Hearn and 874 for Frank Warren. So in terms of leather touching target, they were actually very, very, very close across these 5 fights. That being said, though, quality of punches, high impacts, Frank Warren got the better of Eddie Hearn. 243 for Frank, 200 how much? 243 for Frank Warren and 176 for Eddie Hearn. So better shots went to the team Queensberry. On thrown and aggression, they were very, very even, as probably came to no surprise for the people who watched the fight. One on the pressure metric, it was a solid lead again for Team Frank Warren across multiple fights. So he averaged 43% against 26%.
So overall, I would say the high impact shots were the difference. And I mean, this isn't really going to require me being an incredible mathematician or scientist because we remember 2 major knockouts. The Queensberry captain knocked out the Matchroom opponent, so he got a double score there. And then the Queensberry opponent knocked out the Matchroom captain. So that was probably the 2 big knockouts of the night that swung it into a 10-0 score in the end. But also, those high-impact shots, as close as these fights were, those effective punching metric fighters were the ones that were able to edge even the fights that went to cards. So I think the fact that these guys are talking about a rematch is more interesting when you look at the overall aggregate statistics as to why a rematch between Queensberry and Matchroom is interesting than when you look at the final score. And it's just another example of how the statistics tell their own story and can inform even a card as lopsided as 10-0 can inform the audience of just how tough the guys on Matchroom were to beat and just how close these fights were even when the outcome is dominant. And of course, the big win that Eddie Hearn was expecting and counting on at the end of the night to swing the fight his way, to swing the card his way, was Deontay Wilder. And we've been setting up this whole Wilder-Joshua potential showdown. We've been talking about the undisputed that never was. We've been wondering what would happen ever since Parker beat Wilder, what would happen to Wilder's career. And this night was supposed to be the big comeback, the big show that, yes, Parker beat him, but it was, just a bad night, and the big bronze bomber was back, that the ayahuasca had been flushed out of his system, and he was going to prove that against Zhilei Zhang, another huge puncher who had also been beaten by Parker. And this was going to finally set up potentially Joshua Wilder, and the heavyweight division is back, and the narratives are soluble again. And then Zhang comes in and absolutely destroys Wilder. While you were watching the fight, Michelle, what were you thinking?
I mean, look, I am not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say I was surprised, not because I wrote off Wilder, but because I know what Zhang can do. I mean, Zhang is a very powerful puncher, and I found it a little alarming as to how thin Deontay came in. He looked not to sound disrespectful, but he looked frail. So I wasn't sure where that was going to help him with someone who was significantly bigger and heavier than he was. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't say I was surprised or shocked by the outcome.
I wasn't surprised. If Zhang had been knocked out, I wouldn't have been surprised. I wasn't surprised that Wilder was stopped because I knew somebody was going to get stopped, and I thought of it as a 50-50 fight. So what was surprising to me is just how one-sided it was.
But I feel like he's removing the one thing that always worked for him. I don't think that Wilder should be trying to outbox anyone. I think he was most successful in his fights when he went in and threw those wild-ass shots. You're
clearly right. His whole career...
He windmilled the hell out. Nobody knew what was coming. No, but that was so
I know,
successful.
But you understand, you're right because obviously hindsight. You may have been right all along, but now hindsight is 2020. But the whole time he was doing that, I was like, this guy's got to learn how to box. Like this technique is not going to last forever. Like, what is this shit? I think maybe he just took a right hand. As far as anyone has ever taken it in the annals of the history of the sport, the biggest heavyweight knockout puncher we've seen, percentage-wise, for sure. And, what else do you want from the guy? Like, and he came in the sport late. We don't have no 5-6-year-old videos of Wilder in the ring with his dad training him. Like, this isn't even his original sport. So, yeah, tip of the cap.
It was working for him.
But like that could only work so long anyway.
But how can you say that? Like trying to go the opposite, trying to do what everyone's saying by add more to your arsenal, become a better boxer, has actually been a disadvantage for him.
Well, I know, Michelle. Gosh, I said I was wrong. How many times do I have to say it? But I'm thinking you're wrong too, and that I don't think that would last forever. And once Fury figured out, hey, just come right at this guy and make him have to box, right? That was done. And that would be everyone's strategy going forward.
That's styles make fights. It's not like that with every fight he's going to be in. All the fights
it is until he figures out how to beat that.
Except for Fury, right? Where clearly Fury is the more superior boxer. We understand that. But up until that point, every other fight it's worked for him. Okay? But stylistically, Fury is a nightmare for a lot of fighters.
Once people stop being afraid of the knockout, once people start coming straight at you instead of trying to avoid the right hand, which is what Fury exposed as the way to beat Wilder, you can't win that way anymore. Like, once that veneer is gone of invincibility, of this incredible threat that you have to just worry about the right hand all night, that's what Joseph Parker proved. He just didn't worry about it and outboxed Wilder, and he had no answer for it. So you need at that point to learn how to box.
Joseph Parker was also not afraid to go in and fight on the inside. He wasn't afraid.
But exactly. Else was.
Right, which is what works, but I still feel like at that point, Wilder's still trying to box. You can't just go do what you do. Throw them windmills.
Boy, oh boy, I hate when you're right about things. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, just cut it out.
Look, you never know, but the truth is,
it's annoying.
This happens with a lot of fighters.
And that wasn't even the most exciting heavyweight fight on the card, because that's the last one that I'm gonna bring up in Riyadh season. For me, the 5v5 crown jewel. And really, I know it sounds like crazy to say because we had Undisputed. We talked about how many great fights there were. We went through some of them. For me, Daniel Dubois and Filip Hrgovic was really my favorite Riyadh season fight. It actually was, because I'm a narrative guy. And I really loved how the road that both of these guys were on when they came into the ring. Hrgovic, by the way, heart bleeds for this guy. Like, he played the game with his cards face up. He waited. He was denied his shot when he should have got it. It was like the body snatcher.
Dillian
White. You know what I mean? Like waiting and waiting and waiting, and then all of a sudden time comes and you don't win that fight, and that seems wrong. It feel like Hrgovic got wronged, even though he, kind of didn't, but he kind of did, and he was so stoic about being matter of fact about beating Dubois. He was somewhat dismissive, to be fair. Like, this guy's not going to be my toughest.
Daniel Dubois was kind of set off by comments made by Hrgovic, because remember, he's like, I don't feel like you have the balls. You don't have the balls. Yes. So all week, Dubois was like, I'm going to show him I have balls. I'm going to show him how. He's like he lit a fire in him.
But he has an aura about him of just like a kid. Like, he's just like a sweet kid's energy. You know what I mean? And so even Mike Tyson early days had that kind of sweet kid, but Tyson clearly had this kind of monster bubbling underneath even when he was sweet, whereas you don't really see that with Dubois. So when he is in the ring and he's in those tight moments, you want to see that killer instinct, that explosive nature. You want to see, like, okay, is this guy just going to take a knee because he's a soft kid, or is he going to step up?
He knew there was no margin for error. Like, there was none. This was it. This was it for him.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to have an opportunity at a world title,
again,
this was it. So he has that fire in him, even if he has that nice boy appeal, you know, people say, oh, you don't got no balls, you don't have this. Yeah, he's not a trash talker. He's a silent assassin.
And he, at this stage now, has been doubted and has lost to Usyk, and maybe there's doubt in him this time that wasn't in him when he came through in that last fight, and it's a tougher, harder, higher hill to climb. So I love the stats for this fight because it shows when the fight took a turn, and it took a minute for Dubois to find his way and then seize his moment. So Alan, please, the numbers.
If you look at the overview stats, it looks like, that's a very even fight, right? They're almost even across the different ones, 183, 157, 43, 50 on the high impacts. But then if you look at the round by rounds, you get a very different story. So from round 1 to 6, Hrgovic was winning the fight. Not by a huge margin, but he was consistently outlanding Dubois, at least on the overall landed. Maybe Dubois was higher on the punch quality, if you look at the high impact graph. But nevertheless,
when did the cut become a factor, though? When did the cut become a factor? What round was that?
Round 5 is when the cut started to be like a problem. He might have got cut in 4, but I think 5, if I'm recalling correctly, is when I was like, okay, he's bleeding. Like, this is something we're gonna have to address. I'm gonna say 5.
That would make the most sense, because after round 5 is when the decline of every round he fell off significantly. From if that was round 5
you're right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Then everything flips, and all of Hrgovic's stats just completely drops after that point, like dropping off of a cliff, and it's Dubois all the way. So again, we see this strange pattern, and it's like the stats can actually predict the future a little bit. They're seeing this turnaround that's coming in.
Consistency was key. I'm all for facts over feelings. You know that.
Hashtag facts over feelings. Michelle Joy Phelps with that gym for her Radio Rahim and your people too. That's why Michelle is one of your people too. One of the criticisms that I wanted to address about Riyadh season, especially with those of us who have been there from the beginning, is the environment there. Oh, the atmosphere isn't what it should be. The atmosphere, these are from crybabies who want their sport in their backyard. We all want that. I don't live in Riyadh. I seem to live there now because that's where the fights are. But you know why that is? Because I go where the fights are. You understand? If you are a British fight fan and you are pissed off that British fighters not fighting in England, well, suck it unless you want to get on a plane and follow your fighter to Saudi where they are getting the fights made that you want to see. It's up to the fans to go where the fights are. The fans there, even now they have their own boxing press that is like, in the beginning, that just didn't even exist. They are learning how to watch the fights in person, how to digest the fights. They are now, because it's in their own backyard, experiencing the fights, a lot of people for the first time, second time, and learning what that environment means for them. And it's up to them to determine what the atmosphere is there. And if you want to change the atmosphere, if you think it should be different, then go there and be a part of it. You know what is a shit atmosphere compared to the one that happens in the backyard is when the NFL is in London. I've gone to football in London, and from when the NFL started coming to London, it was, you think that was like Cowboy Stadium when you have it in London in the first few years? No, of course not. British fans didn't even know what the hell they were looking at. They were just there for the fun. And even now, they show up with like jerseys from all 28 teams, no matter which two teams are playing, and they just cheer for the good play. They don't even have a favorite team. And you know what? That's fun. I enjoy watching British people enjoy American football differently than American people enjoy American football. And I would be an idiot to be like, well, this isn't like Cowboy Stadium, because they are learning how to enjoy the sport in their own backyard the way they do it. And it's fun to watch. And it's fun to watch the Saudi community learning boxing, supporting different fighters. The audience is growing. They're picking their favorites, and they're reacting to it the way they naturally react to things. When I went to Macau and we saw Manny Pacquiao start doing fights there at 9 in the morning on Saturday, and they were giving us golf claps. That wasn't an exciting atmosphere. That wasn't Madison Square Garden. But you know what? They were growing to appreciate the sport in their own culture, the way they do it. And after a while, by the time it was Brandon Rios and Manny Pacquiao, they were a bit more animated. They were understanding a bit differently how to express themselves when watching this style of combat. But it was still in keeping with their own culture, because it was in their backyard, and people were flying over, and those people and Filipinos were flying over, and they were out of their chairs cheering and like doing the normal kind of boxing behavior, and that's cool too. But Filipinos didn't come over and try to dictate to the Chinese how they should receive Manny Pacquiao. The point is, boxing is a global sport, and you can watch it how you watch it wherever you watch it. And if you don't like how they're watching it over there, then you will go over there and watch it your way. Saudi is doing, for the fights and the fans, what we've been asking somebody to do since I've been covering the sport. So shut up. And if you want to make some noise, go to the fights and make the noise. Radio Rahim here with your people too. You got to tell them where to find you.
Yeah, I have a new YouTube channel. I know everyone's asking what happened to Lauren. Just don't bother to ask. Just go follow Title Sports Network. We're covering boxing, MMA, and pro wrestling.
Alan, Jabber.ai. Listen, when you are watching these fights, some of those nights, you'll be able to watch these statistics populate in real time. You can go to Jabber on YouTube. Alan, let them know all the platforms, every place they can find Jabber, and sometimes when these fights are happening live, where they can watch the statistics like populate in real time.
Twitter, X, I guess it's called now, Instagram, you can follow us all there. We quite often publish stats there. And very soon, you should go on our website, sign up at jabber.com, because very soon you can do your own stats. You can just put in a YouTube link, fight you love, and you're going to get stats for that fight.